So today I am interviewing Alana from the account Artful Teaching, Joyful Learning. And I've fallen in love with her account. I am just loving learning from her. Okay, sorry, I'm adding her right now. Are you on, Alana? There you are.
Hi.
Hello, how are you?
Hello, I am well. How are you?
Great, thank you for doing this.
My pleasure. Thanks for inviting me. This is going to be fun.
You're one of the first people I've interviewed because I love your account. I was just sharing that I absolutely love your Instagram account, and I've purchased some things from you that I've used, and it's reignited. The reason I got into education is your style of teaching, and it's like brought me back to that because so much of running a classroom and running a home, you lose touch with that artful side of your nature because it's schedules and just keeping everything running, discipline, all of it. And so just coming across your account was so lucky because it reignited in me the whole reason I became a teacher. So anyways, why don't you introduce yourself and give us a little background, your story, and just anything you want to share about what brought you to where you are now with helping people homeschool, helping educators, and so forth.
Absolutely. So I am a teacher at heart. I always have been. I grew up setting all my teddy bears up in a line and, teaching with the old big, back in those days, we had these old big chalkboards. And so I've always been a teacher at heart. And I taught for many, many years in the city I live in called Winnipeg. I taught in our inner city here and loved every minute of it. And I got into teaching thinking I knew a lot about it, thinking I knew, what made kids tick and how to engage them. But I realized that I was lacking a lot of confidence in delivering the instruction. And so I relied a lot on workbooks and sort of worksheets and things like that, so I could check off the boxes and be accountable for everything I was supposed to be covering. That felt comfortable to me. But I very quickly realized, that's not how kids learn, right? That's the top of learning. Now, that being said, there's a yin and a yang. There has to be balance. There's room for both. But I turned to a pedagogical approach called Reggio-inspired learning. Now, in Reggio, there is virtually no curriculum. It's called emergent curriculum. So everything is sort of brought about by the children's interests and their wonder. And in homeschooling, many people call this unschooling.
Okay.
So there's virtually no curriculum to follow. You're sort of just following your kids' interests and wonder and curiosities. And I discovered that didn't feel entirely comfortable to me either. I need a little bit of that structure. I also want to honor our kids' ways of knowing and their curiosities, and I want to let them be little. But we needed to have both. And I believe there is a place for both teacher-guided and child-led. And so I left the field, 10 years ago, and I started having my own kids, and it was like boom, boom, boom. I had 3 in a row, and I decided I wanted to stay home with them. So I was in a blessed position to be able to do so. And so I started up my own little thing, and I started sort of providing enrichment schooling here at home. And because I had that Reggio background, I was a very strong proponent of the arts. Like, I really believe that the arts are a language with which all children can communicate, all children have access to, and it's a really wonderful way to reach and engage our kids. So I really
all ages, right? Yeah.
What's that?
Yeah, it goes back to a 1-year-old can communicate.
Totally.
Of all ages. Yeah.
Totally. So kids, before they can hold a pencil to write or before they can read, they can draw, they can sing, they can dance, right? They can do all these things.
Yes.
And that's what Reggio really teaches us, is that children do in fact have 100 languages with which they communicate and share their ideas. And it's up to us to really tap into those many ways of knowing and be able to offer a really rich program for our kids that hooks them in, that excites them, but also make sure that we, tick off all those academic boxes. We need our kids to be able to read and write and do math and all that stuff. But the way that we do those things is really woven into to that sort of play-based style of learning.
Yes, something that I love that I've come across with you is with your work is setting up an invitation to play. And you kind of have different ideas of how to set up a space in your house as an invitation to play. Can you go into how you do that and kind of the concept behind that?
Sure. So there's a lot of research on the importance of play in terms of children's cognitive development and all that. We all know the importance of that. Sometimes as homeschooling families, we need those opportunities to be able to, break off and do that one-on-one work. And so I found in the past that it was really helpful to have a bit of a strew or set up invitation to really hook our kids in to sort of play independently. Now, this doesn't happen all the time. A lot of the time, play is just simply unstructured and kids just, are free to explore. But an invitation to play is more of a purposeful way of setting up sort of new materials, new toys, new items in your home that are going to sort of bring your kids in, invite them in to really linger and get them immersed into that deep, purposeful play. So that you can then go off and, do your one-on-one work, get the housework done, whatever it is. But that's kind of the idea behind an invitation to play. And then my curriculum also has two other types of invitations. We have invitations to create. So an invitation to create would be like a process-based, art kind of based activity. And then an invitation to wonder, which is more of the Reggio style provocations that you would set up. Maybe it's a new artifact that you found outside, a wasp nest or a bee's nest or something that the kids have been really interested in. And then it's set up sort of for them to ask questions and make theories and that kind of thing. And then invitations to learn. So these are the more sort of teacher guided, our printing practice, our sight word practice, literacy strategies, reading strategy, all those things sort of are built in. So it's really a nice balance of those different worlds, if you will, and allows to honor the kids' ways of knowing, as well as all the things that we need to cover in terms of the curricular learning. So
I love it. I watched a few of your videos and I love how it's almost like you're going from inside the child and you're going with what inspires them. And then you intuitively just pull in that academic stuff. But at first you really pull in the child before you pull in the academic. And that seems to be consistent in what you teach is like, okay, this is what will ignite the child. And then this is how we're going to get the handwriting in. This is how we're going to get the reading skills in. So
exactly,
your style is really speaking to me.
In fact, a cool tool for that, I don't know how many of you are familiar with something called a curriculum map or a curriculum plan. So this is kind of a tool that I use to sort of center around the child's interests or questions or ideas. And then me, as with my teacher hat on, I'm looking across the different curricular subjects, the domains, on how we can weave in that hands-on playful learning, with what we need to cover across the curriculum. So I'm sort of plugging in all of these different ways that we can plan for our kids and making sure that, we're getting to all of those important academics.
I love that. Is there a place where people can find that curriculum map? Is
Yes,
it on your Instagram account or on your website?
I actually just closed the doors not that long ago, and I'll be reopening in late May and early June because I have a course component to my curriculum. So when I bring people into the cohort, I work in a fairly small group supporting them through their practice. So right now the doors are officially closed, but I do have a bunch of other resources that I'm happy to share. I don't know how much time you have. I brought a few things because I love doing show and tell. Can we do a few show and tell items?
Yes, please.
Okay.
Go ahead.
All right. So I'll give you a few examples. So in Reggio, it's really known that kids have these 100 languages, right, with which to communicate. So you might start your year off, like this is when my 5-year-old was, just kinder level, but we started something called an idea book. And in Reggio, documentation is really, really big. So covering, documenting your child's learning, it's a way of making thinking and learning visible. And so like anybody, you know, you might start the year off with a self-portrait. Well, we're not just going to do, you know, Sharpie paint. We're going to also include, you know, a plasticine. This is sort of a plasticine on a plate style portrait. We did clay portraits and clay faces. And then of course there's some writing involved, right? So you would do like an all about me kind of a biography or a story. We did, you can see behind us here is this, I don't know if you can see, but it's a body tracing, one of those that we measured with and we painted and we did all the, you know, all kinds of fun things. So anyway, this is just a place where we kind of document and house all of the important work and learning. It's not a place for the worksheets style stuff. This is more of the hands-on invitations, you know, looking closely at our home and the different shapes that we were noticing and things like that. So an idea book is a really great place. It's just a coil bound book from the dollar store, but I love to be able to, you know, document everything in there and keeps it in one place. It's like a growing living portfolio.
Yes, I love that. Well, it's a great way to, it's a great keepsake, but I like the word that you use, a living portfolio. You know, it's adapting over time and evolving, you know, with
exactly
who knows what direction it will go in, you know, but
exactly
as the child's interests lead them to whatever, discover whatever they will, it will be in that book. So that's awesome.
Yeah, yeah. And then another one that was kind of fun was, you know, geodes. Like we have this geode that's meant for like, you know, the coffee table. I love decor items. And the girls were really intrigued on the makings of this and what, you know, this stone was called and things like that, or the mineral was called. And so we did a huge investigation into rocks and minerals. And so we, you know, in terms of the art, we did these lovely watercolor sort of geode.
Oh, so pretty.
Agate sort of pieces. And then we even grew our own geode crystals in an eggshell. So that was really, that's a super easy experiment.
That's awesome. Would you say that's an invitation to learn? Is that what you would categorize if you set out a geode?
A mix of different ones, right? So for sure the wonder piece was there because they were asking all kinds of questions, and I love to use charts like the KWL chart, which is documenting what our kids want to know, or what they wonder, what they already know about a subject. So so having their kids have so many theories and things that they already think are true. And then, you know, expounding on that investigation through science and through set up invitations to create, like that one there. So it's a kind of a blend of all three kind of worlds.
Oh, I love it. And I do find when I've watched your videos that you do blend all three of those, the wonder, the learning, and the art all together. And I feel like that, if you like, I've taken child psychology classes where they make you reflect on your childhood, so that you, in reflecting on your childhood, that gives you the keys of what children want, what it's like to be a child. And in those classes, if I were to go back and think about my childhood, this style is exactly what would bring me into learning. And I just can't imagine a child who would not just thrive and fall in love with learning with these ideas that you're using. So I love it.
It's all about a multi-sensory approach, right? So the more senses we can fire up in our kids, the stronger those connections in the brain are, the more memorable the experience.
Yes, exactly. And so as a homeschool, like if you were to be a homeschool mom, you have kids of different ages, what would that look like? Would you use the same thing for all the kids to pull them in? Would you focus on your younger kids? How would that homeschool day look like using a Reggio-inspired method?
So the nice thing about a Reggio-inspired method is that, you know, the invitations are open enough and wide enough that you can kind of pull in learning at all different levels. And again, it's about putting on that teacher hat and differentiating. So knowing, you know, my 8-year or 9-year-old needs to focus on certain things. Perhaps in literacy, it's using paragraph structure and descriptive language. So it's not just going to be a simple sentence, or it's not going to be just, can you see me still? Something.
Yes.
Beeped on my system.
You just cut out for just a second.
For your younger child. For your younger child, you know, who's just learning about sound symbol correspondence, the alphabet principles, maybe they're just drawing about it and they're using those beginning labels, right? And so it's about figuring out the expectations and how we can tailor them to our different ages of children. Now, that said, there are certain discrete bodies of, skills and knowledge that certain ages are, need to know, multiplication and addition and all those sequential things that happen. So those are the times where you would probably work more one-on-one with those children. So I like to use that inchworm strategy, like together, apart, together, apart. Sometimes there's that one-on-one time, right? And then where your kids are playing or, exploring, the apps that might consolidate their learning of, alphabet principles and things like that. And then other times where it's more open-ended, these kinds of activities are very, very doable for the whole family. It's like family style learning, right?
Yes.
It's just modifying the expectations a little bit.
Yes. And one of my favorite things about family style learning is even though you have all these different ages, different ability groups, the olders are still yet learning from the youngers, and everybody's contributing. And it's almost like having a classroom of students, but because you have various levels, they all learn and benefit from the various levels, the wide range of ages. And so that's something that I didn't expect with homeschooling is with that family style learning. So how would a parent go about implementing, learning, attuning themselves to this method of teaching? And I think starting with you is a great resource. But
come on over. Come on over. So I think the biggest thing we have to do is put on our observation hats and really look closely and listen to what our children are saying and doing and what they're noticing and what they're interested in. And you can do this by just simply watching them play. What toys are they drawn to? What conversations are they having? What are they noticing when you go outside on your nature walk or your, play at the playground? What are they talking about? And really tuning into those keen interests of a kid. One time we had there was a little glass jar. We have a window behind us here, and we've got a glass jar sitting with some water. We were doing an experiment, and the sunlight happened to cast a little, stream of light through, and it cast a rainbow in our space. And everybody was, of course, so excited for this rainbow. They were like, "Oh, how is there a rainbow in our class?" Like, they were so excited. And so thinking about, okay, wow, here we go. Like, I can use rainbows as a springboard for learning all kinds of things. So we did the science, we did the color mixing, we did, all kinds of learning came from that. So it's really about being present and noticing our kids. So taking stock and observing them, and then finding resources that are going to support their learning and meet them where they're at. So whether that's books, whether that's, activities, invitations to learn and create and wonder, it's about gathering all those things for them that's going to help to propel them forward. So I think those would be two key strategies. And I've got a ton of resources where I'm at. And one of those is a weekly class that I run. And it kind of shows the yin yang balance of, we do a morning meeting, we do a read aloud, we do some songs and rhymes and finger plays, and then we launch into an invitation. And so that's a weekly class that I offer. It's a lot of fun. It's called Inspired at Home, and it's play-based enrichment virtually. So you're kind of sitting alongside your child. It's a mix of a break for you and a little bit of teacher training. Yeah.
That's perfect. It's no better time to do something like this. That's a genius idea. I love it. So I actually have tried to join, but I was off on the time. But I got a little bit of an insight of what it's like just having applied to join your class. Are all your classes free? Is there a charge on a weekly basis? How do you do that?
So it's a membership. It's a membership of, it's kind of like a virtual homeschool co-op. So we have a membership. I have classes that run Tuesdays, which is full. And then I have a Thursday morning class that I've opened up. And it's a monthly membership. There's 4 classes, one every week. And it's a new class every week, a new invitation. I send all of the joy sheets. I call them joy sheets. They're not word sheets. Because they really extend the learning that's happening through the hands-on way. And we have a ton of fun. There's a lot of interaction. There's a lot of engagement. Like I said, I'm interacting with the kiddos, but at the same time, it's a little bit of teacher training, professional development for the parents as to the how and the why and the what we're doing, what we're doing. So, so it's called Inspired at Home. It's on my Instagram profile. You're welcome to check it out and DM me if you have questions.
Perfect. Thank you for sharing that. What a great resource. I'm so excited to use this. I have a 3-year-old and a 5-year-old, and I can just imagine them being just drawn into you and your teaching. So I'm excited. So as a parent, as a homeschool parent, and even as a teacher, it's so easy to get caught up in the checklist and the curriculum. We got to get through this curriculum. We got to do this workbook page and this workbook page and this, like very left brain type activities that do not coincide with how our children's brains want to work. What would you say, aside from, you gave the 2 steps of observing and then finding the resources, what would be either a mantra or an idea or something to open up a parent's brain who's very much feels like they can't depart from the book work? What can you give to them that would help them jump off the cliff of, we don't have to stick with this workbook at all times? Do you know what I mean? What can you tell them that might reassure them to take that step?
Well, number one, everybody is an artist, okay? An artist at heart. And so and when I say artist, I'm not just talking about visual art. I'm talking about all the arts. And I think when we can take on that belief alongside our children that we're all artists and we're all learning and we're all growing together, and we're learning, a lot of parents are really creatively sort of roadblocked, or they just don't feel like they're creative and they just don't want to even go there, right? Because of the mess, because of whatever, they just feel like they're not creative people. I think taking on the stance that you're an artist and you're like a child who's learning art, who has no inhibitions, they have no setbacks or drawbacks on how they create, what they're creating. I think putting on that sort of persona is helpful. I think giving yourself a ton of grace and flexibility to try new things and just go with the flow. Kids are so forgiving. Oh my goodness.
Yes.
They will love you for taking those creative risks. They will love you for making that learning so much more playful and hands-on. And if the lesson sinks, oh well, tomorrow's a new day, right?
Yep. There's always tomorrow. Yeah.
There's always tomorrow.
Yes. Yeah. So I've been trying to implement some of these things with my kids, and they've looked at me like, are you going to start making this worse for us? Because they're suspicious. I mean, I've been in this frame of mind. I just got to get them reading. I just got to get them writing. I just got to get them doing computation. That's been where my teacher brain has gone. And you've helped me to change it. Anyway, and so they've been enjoying learning so much lately, but they keep looking at me suspiciously like, are you going to change this on us? Like, this is too good to be true, And so I understand the struggle that parents have of, you feel the need to push the academics, but I love your approach in that it's convert the child first to follow their passions, but then convert them to the activity and then bring in, at the academics, but you start with the activity that they're going to love passionately first. That's what I've noticed, the pattern in what you've done. What is your number one piece of advice? And you've probably already answered it, but if you have any other advice for parents who are teaching young children at home?
Oh boy, I was there. My kids were very close together. I had a 3, 2, and 1-year-old at one point. And
good for you. Wow.
Again, it's about releasing that expectation in your mind, and about knowing that that things might not look Pinterest perfect, and that's a good thing. A lot of the stuff that you're seeing on Pinterest is not developmentally appropriate. It's not stuff our kids are necessarily even interested in. So put that on the shelf for a bit and really just notice your children and their interests and their desires, and set up fun you know, things that you would like to dive into and things like that. So I hear my doorbell ringing right now. I think
you need to go.
I will need to go shortly.
Okay.
But yeah, no, thinking about our kids and their honest desires and interests and curiosities and wonder, and planning around that, making learning playful in that sense. But again, giving yourself tons and tons of grace. We know our young children have very short attention spans, and they're not going to be sitting and doing seat work, nor is that developmentally appropriate for hours upon hours a day, right? So we want to keep things, you know, short, sweet, and really just see how we can hook them in. It's all about developing lifelong learners. We don't want learning to stop at the age of, you know, 18. We want our kids to have that mindset that I am a learner for life, and I'm always curious, and I'm always asking questions, and that's a really, really good thing. So, so yeah, I think keeping things as hands-on as possible. I mean, you talked about child psychology theory, and like knowing that, you know, when kids are really young, they are learning through the senses. They're not robots meant to sit in front of educational apps and, you know, sit in front of worksheets all day. They are children who learn through all 5 senses, and it's important to engage all of those. So at the very young ages, you know, they need to be concrete hands-on experiences. They cannot be those, you know, abstract, you know, moving on to worksheet addition, subtraction type stuff. Our kids need lots and lots of opportunities to build and manipulate and explore and all of those things.
A whole lot of freedom, right? I always say a little bit of structure and a whole lot of freedom, because you know, you can have a clean home and still give your child places where they can explore, places where you can draw them in to wonder.
Having those set up little spaces, whether you have your own dedicated homeschool space or not, it doesn't matter, but having those dedicated zones, whether it's for imaginative play with construction and characters and things, so much learning comes from that. That's how kids start to tell stories. And then that's how they learn to write, right? So they need stories to write about. So giving them those opportunities to act out those stories, those narratives, you know, using blocks and dinosaurs and little animals and people, and allowing them to tell those stories through small world play. So having a zone for that, having a zone for creating, like a messy zone. You know, you want your kids to be able to not be inhibited creatively. When they have to ask for permission every time they want to go use an art supply, it kind of gets tiring for a kid, right? So within reason, you're not going to set up all the tempera paints and it's a smorgasbord of acrylic everywhere, right? You have to set up ground rules, and you have to practice and develop expectations. But having a dedicated space for that work is so important, and sends the message to our kids that they're valued, that learning is valued there, and their creative work is valued.
I love it. Oh, I just love your perspective and what you are offering the world. I feel like if moms can learn from you and embrace what you're teaching, it will change not just their kids' learning, but their relationship with their children. And I think children, like, one of my passions is the depth of a parent's ability to bond with their child is so deep. And yet I don't know if we as a society really understand how to connect with children. So I think what you are doing can change children's lives, but parents as well. So I love everything you've shared. Can you just finish by sharing what you have to offer, what resources? You mentioned the weekly classes. Anything else that you have to offer? I've purchased some other products from you. So anything that you'd like to share that people can purchase?
I do have, if you do sign up for the weekly classes, or if you head on over to, try to think of the freebie that I can offer folks. I do have a freebie called the Organized Homeschool Room. And maybe I can send that over to you, and you can pop that in your link tree or whatever. But it's all about organizing your homeschool space and sort of beautifying it without spending a ton of money. So bringing kids' artwork in and really honoring our kids as artists, cool ways to organize things, to keep things streamlined. I can share that with you, and then you'd be on my email list, and then we can communicate that way. I do offer the weekly classes. I have a startup kit. It's all on my website. You can go and have a peek and shop around.
Yes, I love it. It's amazing, all the products you have. And if you haven't visited ArtfulTeaching, Joyful Learning. Sometimes I get those two mixed up.
I do too.
That's so funny. If you haven't visited that Instagram account, just start there and you'll be hooked. You'll be drawn in, just like your children will be drawn in by your products. And then I think you have a great work that you're doing. So thank you so much, Alana, for coming on and taking your time with us. I really appreciate it.
My pleasure. Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, have a great day.
Okay, you too.
Thanks.
Okay, bye-bye.